Hi everyone, this is Sarah Michel with another weekly challenge to God. My challenge to God, I do it pretty much every week, where I challenge the so called Almighty to provide any sort of demonstration of His power and therefore prove that He exists. Now, this week I'm going to do something slightly different. I am going to use Alvin Plantinga's famous Modal Ontological Argument to prove that Superman exists. Now, his argument, Plantinga's argument, goes as follows. Premise one, it is possible that a maximally great being exists. Premise two, if it is possible that a maximally great being exists, then such being exists in a possible world. Premise 3. If such being exists in a possible world, then it exists in every possible world. Premise 4. If a maximally great being exists in every possible world, then it exists in the actual world. And if this being exists in the actual world, then of course it exists. And a maximally great being is true. It exists in the actual world. And of course, the problem now with this argument is to define what maximally greatness is. And according to Plantinga, there are three elements that defines a being as being maximally great: omniscience, omnipotence, and moral perfection. Now, where does Superman fit into it? Well, he happens to have the three elements. He has omniscience, omnipotence, and moral perfection. Why do I say that? Well, how do we define omniscience? Superman has the power of mind control. He doesn't use this very often, but he has the power. He also has the power of telepathy. Also, doesn't use very often, but he does have that power. He also has the power to change time. Now, Superman famously made the Earth spin backwards in order to go back in time and save Lois. I think that was Superman 2. I'm not sure which movie it was. But he does have the power to do that. So if he does have the power to change time, Superman is omniscient. He has the power to control minds and change time. That is how I define omniscience. When it comes to omnipotence, well, Superman has the power to lift and move every object that we can think of. Now, if a being has the power to destroy, to move everything that we can imagine, such being is omnipotent. That's how I define it. Now, I know that within the DC universe, Superman is not the only creature or being that has all these powers. There are many other beings that have the power, but where Superman stands out is that he is morally perfect. Why do I say that? Well, because despite him being having all this power, Superman decides to help people. He doesn't ask anything in return. He does so only for his own personal satisfaction of helping others. Now, that is moral perfection. He has all the power that you can think of, and still he does it for good. He still does it only to help those who are in peril. Now, that is my definition of moral perfection. And therefore, using the modal ontological argument, I just proved that Superman exists. He's real. And if you say he isn't, he's just a creation of DC Comics, well, the universe is very big, right? We don't know what's out there. So you can't prove that Superman doesn't exist. That's what theists often claim about God. So if you can't prove that Superman doesn't exist, now I have logically proved that he does. And you can't prove the contrary. Now, if you don't like Superman, that's fine. You could do the same argument for Doctor Who. It's that easy. You just have to change your definitions of omniscience, omnipotence, and moral perfection. But if you say that these are not what these words actually mean, Well, let me break it out to you. No one has the ownership of meanings of words. These are abstract concepts. My argument, like my definitions, are in no way false or wrong just because they are not adopted by the majority of people. Characteristics of actual beings are not contingent to human definitions or to human consensus. If there is God, if there are gods or godlike creatures out there, their properties don't care about how we define words, don't care about if we agree or disagree regarding certain characteristics. They don't care about that. So that is the problem with this kind of argument. It's just words. Anyone can make up their own. If more people agree with me or not with my definitions of omnipotence, omniscience, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. These characteristics don't depend on that. If such thing as omniscience exists, it doesn't care about how we define it. It is an actual property. It's the same thing, let's say, using physical elements, or better words to describe actual objects, the atom. Now, there were many discussions through time, through history, what is the atom? And only in the beginning of the 20th century that we actually were able to detect it. And then now we have an actual thing, an actual physical thing with physical properties, and then we can define an atom. Now, it has been defined in many ways. The smallest part of an object, which is now we know is not even true. Now, there are subatomic particles. So it's, of course, that is the problem with this kind of arguments. It's simply words. Anyone can make up whatever argument they want. It doesn't prove nothing. The only way to prove that Superman exists, and if we see him flying out the window, the only way to prove that God exists is if God does some demonstration that he's real, or we can somehow detect God, and something that is undoubtedly an omniscient or omnipotent and moral perfect being. Such creature has never been detected. Such creature has never have given any demonstration that he exists. Only if you believe in holy Bibles, Qurans, and other books that claim such thing happen. But again, such is only claims, only words on pieces of paper. No physical argument for nothing, no physical evidence. And that's why until I have any convincing physical evidence without any reasonable doubt that that is God, I will continue to say that God does not exist. But Superman does, and I just proved it. I've been Sarah Michel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.